All right, go ahead, guys.
All right, I'm going to call the day's meeting to order. It's August 20. Time is a little after 12:30, year 2020. And do we have a quorum, Mr. Hume?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have quorum present.
All right. In the event that somebody needs to speak, I'm going to ask that you just unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll have everybody mute yourself, and then Andy can let me know. I'll kind of work through him that way. I'll also look at it. You can do the raise hand feature, but I have trouble right now seeing everybody, but we'll see what we can do. Let's see now. If you would, uh, what I'd like to do would be to ask Jerry, would you go ahead and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Jerry, you're muted.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The acknowledgement of guests, would you please advise, let me know who the guests are? Uh, for the for the record, I can see names as participants, but if you'd let me know for the record, Andy.
Yes, sir. So we have Kent Fryer, who is airport consultant with Molden Corbin. And let me see here, who else we have? We have Cynthia Campo, who is the uh, budget analyst with Economic Development Department. And Lorianne Romero, who is, of course, our admin assistant at the airport and our recording secretary. And we also have Mike Kading joining us from Southwest Aviation. So, Mr. Chair, those are the guests that I see who have attended. It looks like, in addition to you, Mr. Chair, we have Mr. Clark, Vice Chair Palmer, Mr. Leonard, and Mr. Privet as far as board members. So we do have a quorum, sir.
All right. So if you see me get up, it's because these chimes here, the wind's blowing a little bit. I'm going to undo them so it doesn't override when I'm talking. The minutes for June 18. Do you have a motion or comment regarding those minutes?
Mr. Chair, just for the purpose of those who may not have tuned in at the July meeting, these were the minutes that were denied approval. And I appreciate Lori's work in getting back with our transcriptionist and getting the amendments taken care of and getting them revised. So what you're seeing are the revised summary minutes for June 18th being brought back for your review and hopefully approval.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion or comments?
I move the minutes be accepted as revised.
Mr. Clark moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. This is Ross.
Mr. Palmer, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Unmute yourself and say aye.
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 Any opposed? I hear none. Those minutes are approved. Now for July 16, do we have any comments or motion with respect to those?
Chairman Darden, this is Ted Leonard.
Yes, sir.
Under number 3 on the first page, item 3, we need to remove Dan, Ted, and Wes from the guest list. They were present. They were present as members up above, not guests.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions regarding the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve subject to the oh, I'm sorry, Andy. Do I have a motion to approve subject to the change in Article in item number 3.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Mr. Clark moves. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Ross.
Mr. Palmer seconds. Is there any opposition? Anybody voting nay? See none. Is there at least one voting aye? I'll vote aye.
Aye.
Minutes of July 16 are approved. There are no action items, so for discussion items, we have National Guard Readiness Center. Mr. Hume.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We were unable to connect with Mr. Archibek from Armstrong Consultants for an update on this. And I'll just, actually, before I confirm that, I'll just triple check. Yeah. So we do invite him to participate in this meeting. Anyway, the National Guard is my last update was that all of the site work is completed, and pretty much all of the interior work is completed as well. The work that remains is getting the fire suppression system installed in the main hangar bay, and then that'll need to be tested. So according to the information I've received from the captain, the commander here in charge, he said that not captain, lieutenant, sorry, that they're looking to be certainly out of the hangar they lease from us, and hopefully be fully into that new center round about the beginning of the year. So those plans are still on track. What I'll do, Mr. Chair, is I'll reach out to Mr. Archibek and see if there's any other information that I need to provide, and if so, I will send that back through to the board. But we will maintain this as a monthly discussion item until the Readiness Center is open and operational.
Do any members of the board wish to ask Andy any questions regarding what he's stated so far regarding National Guard readiness? Do I have any comments from any member of the board? Any members of the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to LRU action plan. And with that, either Jerry or Ted, one of you take the lead, and I will mute myself.
This is Ted. I hope everyone got a chance to read our memo that Lori attached to the email with the agenda. And I don't have a whole lot to add to our memo, but I would like to encourage the other members of the board to take a look at that Market Street Phase 2 study that Andy is going to be sending you all out. And in general, I think we should pursue development of the mission statement and vision statement, et cetera, as part of what you could call the rebranding of the airport, spotlighted by the new logo, et cetera. But I do think the board needs to be kind of careful about how we proceed about filling gaps in the action plan, because it seems to me the more Jerry and I got into it, we kept discovering, with Andy's help, new documents like this Phase 2 study that basically do fill in some gaps in the plan. So I think we need to be sure that we've seen everything that has been done subsequent to the action plan before we start reinventing the wheel. And I also might suggest, I don't know if this is the right place for it in the agenda, but maybe we should have another presentation from Dr. Martinez from the Economic Development Division of the city to find out how they're fitting the airport into their general plans. And I think I'll turn it over to Jerry, because he has some more ideas on how to approach filling in these gaps.
I really don't have any more ideas, but the city and over the last 30 years has spent taxpayer money with all kinds of reviews, reports, master plans. Andy was very helpful in allowing us to see the 1997 master plan, which was quite extensive and still fits. But we have come a long way since then on the facility. And basically, it's Ted's in my view that the facility is really good. In one of our estimations of where to go and what to do next, we took a look at several airports that were equal in size or bigger than Las Cruces Airport. And it seems like that they had kind of been stagnated after they got everything developed and they were ready to go, and they didn't know what to do next. And I think Las Cruces Airport is there. The next, the markets, what's the name of that thing, Ted? Market Streets plan does a lot about the development of ways to attract new business into the West Mesa and Park, as well as the airport. And I think what we saw, the way to go forward was perhaps to get more buy-in from all the players, not only at the airport, but at the industrial park as well. So on top of what Ted just said, that's basically all what my view was. And that's what we both put into our individual vision statements and mission statements that you see on this memorandum.
Well, this is John. I appreciate the work that you put into it. And I'm looking now again to get the ball rolling, to begin the first next step. I'd like to ask you, as for the record at least, what you both, either of you, recommend as our next step as a board. Whether you continue to do something as a subcommittee, whether we have put this on as a discussion item. We'll keep this on as a discussion item, but what we might be able to continue doing, or what you recommend we continue doing in this regard.
This is Ted. I think we should pursue developing a mission statement and a supporting vision statement. And I'm not sure whether that means we should have a work group with the board and Andy, or whether we should meet with the Economic Development Department. And if you want to just leave it with our subcommittee of 2, that's fine as well. We would like Andy's input if we try to combine our mission statements, etc.
And this is John again. So what, Andy, what are the possibilities of getting either Dr. or either your supervisor or somebody else to make a presentation with knowledge, preferably up the food chain? No disrespect to you, you give us valued advice on a meeting by meeting basis. But in terms of what the Economic Development Department or the city manager has in mind for the development of the airport, because it is a defined area within the entire region that the city owns property, but it has its own separate corridor, separate boundaries, and separate issues, I assume, yet they're intertwined with the same issue, with issues involving the development of the West Mesa.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, first of all, I certainly don't take any disrespect at all. I think we have an excellent working relationship between us and the board, between me and the board, and certainly the approach that is being proposed is a is a very holistic approach, and I think it's a wise one, that we don't look at things. Yes, I agree. There are certain circumstances that are very unique to the airport versus any other part of the city, but when one of the key phrases is a non-siloed approach. We want to look at it how the almost like a quilt. How does it all come together and form that? So what I'll do, I made a note here about your the board's request for to hear more from Dr. Martinez. And also, we now have our deputy director, Dr. Payares, who also is very active. He's working with me very closely on all of the airport and industrial park planning projects. So I think his input would be quite valuable as well. So what I'll do is I'll forward that request, and we will work on getting them, hopefully getting to hear from them either in October or November here, preferably October, so we can keep the momentum going. I also would like to, in return, thank Ted and Jerry for the work that they've put in. We had an excellent meeting here at the airport, and we've also had some good conversations. I've had good conversations with both of them about this, and I greatly appreciate the work that this represents, this document that I have up on the screen, looking at a couple of different versions of a vision statement, a mission statement, and some goals. This when I initially mentioned this to the board, I felt that these were some very critical things that were missing. So it could be one or the other, or better still is some coalescing of these ideas into very strong statements. So I absolutely am looking forward to working with Mr. Leonard and Mr. Clark on refining this and bringing something back. Hopefully, something that we can put forward as a recommendation to City Council. So hopefully that addresses your questions, Mr. Darden, and if Chair, and if not, I'll be more than happy to clarify.
The only thing in addition I'd like to ask is if there are any members of the public who wish to participate in that, who have particularly either experience or either interest in the airport and experience that might be relevant, to contact Mr. Hume. And as much as we're streaming live on YouTube, perhaps there may be other people watching, and there just may be the 11 of us that are noted on my screen. But if there is somebody who wishes to participate in that with the subcommittee, at least let Andy know. As far as the members of the board are concerned, the most we could have would be one other member of the board at this point in time involved in that subcommittee, without having to have open meeting issues regarding your meeting, because then we'd have a quorum if we had 4 or more. With that, is there any comments on any member of the board at this point?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add that while we're waiting for Andy to push this other part forward, I'd like to ask any members of the board or the public that have inputs to the vision and the goals and the mission that we've put forward to send us a note and tell us what they would like to see. Because Ted and I came up with some ideas, but there's probably some more out there.
Well, I think it's excellent, excellent progress. People don't understand mission, vision, and goals, and their definition, or how they need to be separated, and you did a good job from my perspective. Are there any comments from any members of the board?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any other hands raised in the participant list.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the next topic, which is the airport manager's report and project list.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this discussion, and it's actually a great segue into a lot of the things that we've been certainly doing, and certainly relates to what Mr. Clark was saying with the progress that our team has made over the last couple of years, and some of the things that we still have in front of us to get taken care of. So I want to just update you all on the Part 139 inspection. Normally we have ours in May. Of course, we've had some challenges with travel and those types of things. We are currently in the documentation and administrative paperwork gathering phase. We will have all of that submitted on or before the week of 7 September. So, and then the site visit, the in-person visit, is tentatively scheduled for the week of 28 September. So we just wanted to let you guys know that, keep you updated on that. We will have all of our paperwork submitted prior to the next board meeting. I certainly, we certainly will be able to make all of that available if anybody wants to provide some, just take a look at what it is that we have to provide. Between now and the site visit, I'm hoping that by the time we have our next board meeting, which should be on the 17th September, we will have some confirmation of the site visit. So hopefully we'll stand by for that, Mr. Chair. The next item is
Andy, on that topic, could I ask, I'm sorry, we'll wait till later. I was going to ask and see if there are any board members who wanted to participate in that site visit. I know that Mr. Privet and Ms. Irick have operations out there. If there are board members, if you'd reach out to them and see if they can be socially distanced enough to participate in that if they want to. But if you, in any event, go ahead with the rest of your report, and I apologize for interrupting. I shouldn't have done that.
Not at all, Mr. Chair. One of the things I'll do is, if there is anybody interested, I'll make sure to connect with our FAA inspector and see how that could be arranged. There's some really key items in this report, and then this next one is one of them. We have been talking about rolling out our airport-wide training program for many months now, and I know that some of you have even very early on in the conversations have been involved in this. We've made a lot of comments and updates at board meetings. And Mr. Chair, I am very pleased to report that we finally have it rolled out airport-wide. We've had quite a number of people. I think we're closing in on about a third of the tenants who have already taken the training and are in line to get their car key. I think we're about that level. Certainly a quarter, I would say. And so I really, on the record, I really want to say thanks to everybody who has certainly supported this all the way along. Just a quick reminder, it is required by FAA, particularly the driver training. If you're going to have access, you need to have the driver training, and we're really endeavoring it to do it in a way that A, meets our needs, and B, is as convenient and easy as possible for our tenants and our everybody who works on the airfield. So thank you very much, everybody, for collaborating with us on this. And it is, we will have to make some fine tune. We will have to adjust. This is the first time we've ever had a training program like this. And so inevitably we'll have to make some adjustments, but we're making them on the fly, and we're getting some really great feedback on both the programs themselves, the sessions themselves, as well as how we're rolling out the program. So that feedback is very much appreciated.
And Mr. Hume, when are you going to let board members take the training? With those of, I assume maybe Mr. Privet has and Ms. Irick perhaps, but the rest of us, Mr. Palmer has a plane out there. The rest of us would probably like to be able to take that training so we can understand the nature of your training, or for me as a pilot to be able to go on the airfield.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. If that's one of the adjustments that we need to make, in some cases we don't. There are some who are sublessees, and so we don't necessarily have all of their contact information. If anybody has not already received the invitation to participate, I know I was talking with Mr. Palmer a little earlier today about the training. If you have not received the invitation, please by all means let us know, and we will get you signed up and send you the steps that are to take the training. Thank you very much for letting me know that, Mr. Chair. It's
Gentlemen,
a
I need to
process.
interrupt. I'm sorry. I need to go. I need to leave the meeting. I'm sorry. Did you catch that?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Privet.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Take care.
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Hume a question about the training. I've tried to get into the system about 4 different days, and I've sent messages to Tom Reynolds, I believe is the guy that's operating the thing, and the instructions that you gave me will not allow me to sign in, Andy.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know that, Mr. Clark. I am putting your name here on my list here. Let's see. I know Mr. Palmer has received it. I know Mr. Privet has received it, and I know Ms. Irick has received it. Ted, do you need to do the any driver training on the airfield?
I don't know that I need to do it, but I would do it.
Okay, all right. I will send you the info, and then also, Mr. Chair, you said you haven't received it yet either?
Correct, I have not received anything.
Okay, I will follow up with this right after the meeting and make sure that everybody is either signed into the system or that we've make sure that your login is working properly in your case, Mr. Clark. Thank you for letting me know that.
Andy,
Yes.
this is Ted. Is this online training?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions from the board or guests about the training?
Yes, Andy, Ross here. One question on the sign in, the way we were told to sign in, is our name previously known in the training database, or can anybody sign into it if you follow those directions, and will it let them sign in?
Excellent question. So everybody who is able to sign in has already had their information entered into the system. So if there is somebody who needs to be able to sign in and is not able to, probably their information has not been entered. So all you need to do is send an email to myself and Tom with their full name and email address, and then we'll set it up. And the sign in is very easy. It's first name period last name, and so it's super simple. And then you can go in afterward and change the generic password.
Okay. Actually, I never changed my password. I just logged out, so maybe it won't. I don't need to get into it again. I've already done the test. So, okay, I'll let the person I was talking to earlier know about that and get an email out so their name can get installed in your database. That's all I want to know. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so I want to move on to the updates on the work that we're doing with the leases. It took several months, but a basically a line-by-line review of all of the airport leases has been completed. And there's a very extensive database that has been put together by the Du Bois and King, who we're working with on this project. And what we anticipate is by the 15th September, by the middle of next month, we should have their final set of recommendations. Staff is going to review those. And what we plan on doing is having at least a 30-day review. We're going to send it out to everybody in the community, the airport community, to take a look at, provide input. And Mr. Chair, what my recommendation is that we look at having the Airport Advisory Board meeting in October, which would be right in the middle of that public review period, is have that as a discussion item on the October meeting. That may mean that we need to have a bit longer meeting there to have opportunity for public input, but preferably, and I'll put this in my email to everybody. Preferably, comments in writing are always the best, because we know who it comes from. We have a good date time stamp on it, and we can include it as verbatim what their concern is, what their question is, what their feedback is, as opposed to a conversation, which is still good. Absolutely, we'll address any questions, but it would be more verbatim and easier to just pass that information on. So anyway, that's my recommendation, sir, is that we have that as a topic on the October meeting. So I'll be getting with you. I'll have a reminder on that as we get closer.
All right. And are there two types of leases? Because my concern about having a group of people, I've seen previously with the city, it was before you, Andy, but they run through things and have staff who've never owned an airplane, rented a hangar for an airplane, or conducted a business at an airport. And it seems to me that you need to have two different types of leases. One is for the leases for people who are leasing for their aircraft, which could be both the shade hangars, parking outside, and parking inside a hangar. And then you have the long-term business type tenants. And there are two different types of animals that you have to address, two different types of criterion. And I'm hopeful that your committee, if it doesn't have them, that you would bring on somebody from each of these two types of groups to look at it before we waste time at a public meeting. Before they come up with something final, it would be better to have some input from these type of individuals that you could massage and put into whatever you get to us. That's just my thought. But
okay. Well, Mr. Chair, I appreciate that feedback. When we get Du Bois and King is a consulting firm, an airport consulting firm, and I know a lot of I've been able to meet and work with a lot of the folks on their team, and my main point of contact actually used to run an airport like me. He was an airport manager. And so they have a really great team, very experienced team in dealing with that. Your point, I think, is very well taken on bringing that experience to the table. What we'll do is we will have probably at least 3 weeks or so from the time that we receive their draft recommendations until the time we get to the October board meeting. And so I think that would be a great period of time to certainly engage individuals who have that experience here locally as well, to be able to look at the recommendations from the consultant. So I will thank you very much for that feedback, sir, and I will work on being as inclusive as possible in our review.
all right, thank you. Go ahead with your report.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to move on to projects. I've been telling people this all morning. I'm actually here at the airport today. And I said, I've been telling people the color black has never looked so beautiful. If you haven't been out here, what we're calling Area 1, which is the main area for our terminal apron reconstruction, is just looking beautiful. It is spectacular. And I want to give all the credit in the world to both Moses and Corbin, who did the design and the project management, and then absolutely to Morrow Enterprises, who has been our contractor. They have done a phenomenal job. I really encourage you to come out and take a look. It's just, it is pristine, and it's going to serve our airport very, very well for many decades. And so very happy, very pleased about that. We fortunately also came in under budget, which is always a good thing. And so, and by budget, I mean the amount that the FAA had allotted for the project. And so we were able to do an additional ramp area. So we're calling it Area 2. And this is the area that is immediately adjacent to and north of the sunshades that the city owns. It's really one of the last areas of the ramp that are in so bad a shape we can't do any maintenance on it. We really have to do some what we're going to do is what's called partial depth reconstruction. So it's definitely more than maintenance. It's definitely more than a little bit of rehab. It's a significant improvement to that area. But I think, if the current project is any indicator, I mean, it's just going to be absolutely pristine, and we're going to, again, have great facilities for a long time. I'm happy to report that the perimeter fence is done. The fence is up, the gates are up, the anti-burrowing skirting has been installed. There's one more thing that we're doing, and that's putting a new fence around the retention pond. But actually was driving by there earlier today, and that's almost done. So very pleased again. Thanks to Moles and Corbin for design and project management. And then also, I don't have it on here, but L&J Fencing is the lead contractor, and they have been outstanding to work with. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. Some of you have been attending the landscape master plan public meetings. They have been, I'm going to tell you, Mr. Chair, I'm very pleased because they have been some of the most productive public input meetings that I've been involved with in a very, very long time. And so even though the size of our groups have not been big, the productivity out of those individuals has just been outstanding. And I think that we're going to have a really great product. And I'd like to bring it to the board on the September meeting so that we can take a look at the progress to date. Looks like Jerry has his hand raised.
Yes, I do, Andy. After attending the last of those landscape master plan meetings, and I was discussing with a number of the pilots that were gathered at the around their hangars. There's one thing that in all the discussion about the landscaping master plan that we never mentioned. And that was, this is an airport after all. It is for airplanes. It is for airplane related activities. And I know I've been involved with you in bringing up ideas that aren't necessarily airport related. They're community related, they're park related, they're other kinds of relations. And the people I talked to just wanted me to bring back the message that this is an airport. It's nice to have certain things at an airport, but it is about airplanes, and it is about people who fly them and repair them and do this sort of thing. So they asked me to carry this message to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. I appreciate that. What I might do is if you don't mind, if I could follow up with you after this meeting, and we can maybe talk a little bit about that. And I have maybe some follow-up questions for you on that. So
I'd be
because I
happy
know
to.
you and, oh, go ahead.
I'd be happy to try to answer the question.
Okay. Because I know you and Mr. Leonard have been involved in those meetings quite often. So just based on what your comments are, I'd like to hear a little bit, just talk a little bit more about that. But thank you very much for being involved in that and for passing that along. Let's see here. I think I talked about the runway extension updates last time. We just in case I didn't, I wanted to bring it up. So the master plan calls for extensions for runway 826 and 1230, and 826 has been programmed, and we are anticipating the grant application from the FAA and getting that executed here. It just within the hopefully the next few weeks. That would cover the environmental assessment portion of the project. The second phase, which is design, has been programmed into FAA's federal fiscal year 2021. So we are moving forward very well on the extension for 826. During the legislative session this past January, the state did identify funding for us for the environmental assessment and design, both phases, for runway 1230. Right now, we are waiting for those bonds to be sold. That probably will not come about until probably the second quarter of this fiscal year, maybe even as late as December, January, in that time frame. So while we don't have the funding available to us yet, as soon as those bonds are sold, we will be able to then move forward with our capital outlay for that project. So we're looking forward to that. So we're going to be working both of those extensions together. They'll just sort of be offset a little bit by a few months, which is not a bad thing anyway, because once we get to the point where we're going to be requesting funding for construction, that's where the heavy lifting is going to be, and having some additional time to be able to build those relationships and talk about the benefits of those runway extensions. Having that time is going to be important. So let's see here. The last thing, Mr. Chair, that I want to mention is, and I'm going to be sending out an email reminder to all the tenants. As typical in the desert, we have not had enough rain to make our grasses, or our lawns green, but we have had enough rain to make our weeds grow. I noticed in driving around earlier today that there were several areas around hangars where the weeds are pretty tall and need to be mowed or removed or what have you. So I will be sending around a reminder to our tenants about that. I just wanted to use this for anybody watching on YouTube or what have you, to please give attention to that. And we will be sending out reminders. So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to give the update, and I'll stand for any more questions.
All right, any questions from members of the board before I ask mine? Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, John, Ross here.
Go ahead.
Annie, maybe I should have mentioned this on the phone to you earlier when we had our short conversation. 2 days ago, when Gay and I were flying in her airplane, we weren't receiving localizer, glide slope, or DME signals from the ILS. I don't know if that had been reported before.
Thank you for letting me know that. Tech Ops was out here earlier today, so it may have been reported back to them. but they were out here earlier today. I'll make sure that they take a look at that. I'm making a note here right now to
Okay,
check.
well, if they were here, they probably figured it out. You know, they're probably able to figure out that it wasn't working if they were in the equipment area.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
I will definitely follow up with them and make sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hume.
Probably then, Andy, with that, it is a safety issue as far as the glide slope at all. And perhaps there needs to be a reminder to members of the using public that if they have technical issues that they need to notify your office. Like you periodically send out these ABCD, I guess, to everybody on your email list, and perhaps you could remind them of that, plus remind them as well of the training that's necessary to drive on the airport. And I know that you get those out on a frequent basis, but those two might be something that you might want to remind people as topics.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
And then on the weeds, what does the city do with respect to the weeds that are growing out there? I haven't been out there in a couple of weeks, so I don't know what the status is. I know where I live and work downtown that the city has these people who come by in a truck and spray green stuff on the weeds that are on the sidewalk and stuff. Do they do the same thing out at the airport?
Mr. Chair, yes, we have a pretty robust treatment program. Mostly we mow. That's particularly around the runways, taxiways, and other more open areas that we have. We also use pre and post-emergent herbicides to have weed control, particularly around the signs and lights and more of the tighter areas to get into. At this point in time, Mr. Chair, we do not do weed control on the parcels that are leased. So if if somebody has particularly over on the east side, not so much on the west side, but on the east side where you have the larger box hangers that are on the say 100 by 100 parcels, the areas around the sides and backs of those, the city does not maintain those. It's actually part of the leaseholder's responsibility to maintain them. One thing I will say in connection with that is that more than one leaseholder has asked, would it be possible for the city to maintain them? It's something that we could consider. It's something that we would probably need to figure out a charge for, because we just can't simply do that. It would require some additional people power and stuff like that to add those to our already sizable list of maintenance, but it's something we could consider.
All right, the next item, are there any questions, any comments regarding Mr. Hume's report and project list? If you are, raise your hand or unmute yourself, and Andy can let us know if there are anybody. I'll mute myself. You don't see anybody, Andy, so next item on the menu is public input. Is there any input from our public participants, which is according to let's see, as I'm looking at it, other than members of the that are work for the city, Mr. Kading is about the only other public individual. Is there any public individual who wishes to make a statement?
I don't see any individuals wanting to make a comment, sir.
Okay, so the next item is board member comments and suggestions. And would you just go down the roll, Mr. Hume, and ask each individual board member if they have any comments? And I'll go ahead and mute myself right now.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. So I'll start with Mr. Leonard. Any comments that you want to bring up, Mr. Leonard?
I have nothing to add to what I mentioned about the gaps in the action plan. I'd like to hear from the Economic Development Department, and I hope the board members read that phase 2 study from Market Street. That's all.
Mr. Chair, I'll make sure to send out that phase 2 study, make it available to the board members. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Hume, I have no further comments.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes, Mr. Hume, I don't have any comment on number 9, but I will for number 10 when you go down that list. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Chair.
Nothing for the chair. Thank you. Oh, yeah, my next comment would be under item 10 as well. That would be it.
Okay, then for item 10, Mr. Leonard, any future presentation discussion items?
I guess just the presentation from Economic Development regarding the airport plans.
Okay. Mr. Clark, any other future items?
No, sir.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, Mr. Hume, this goes back to our brief conversation earlier. And I guess to kind of bring the board up to date, Mr. Hume and I discussed airport access after hours, and also I brought up the issue of security. Mr. Hume informed me that there are things under consideration, under study for after hours access, and I'm presuming that's going to be forthcoming by email or however it is to get the word out. But I would, Mr. Hume, what I'm asking for is for you to add the security issue that I mentioned, the after hours security issue, if it's possible to weave that into a future presentation.
Sure. Yes, Mr. Chair, and just to let the board know, we are working on a security plan for the airport. And this is going to be a comprehensive plan, not just to address issues that may currently exist, but certainly in looking ahead as we explore adding passenger air service and other things here at the airport. So what I can do, Mr. Chair, is we're expecting our final draft of that plan, and I can give a presentation to the board at an upcoming meeting, possibly in September, if not maybe in October, on that plan, and we can discuss that prior to moving forward with it. Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Okay, so I guess is that turn into me then as the next person?
Yes, sir. You're next on the list.
All right. So I'd like to ask that the city attorney at some point in time advises of our roles or responsibilities. In theory, we're supposed to get an open meetings presentation every year, every once a year, I thought. But at some point, whether it's this coming meeting or looks like October is going to be pretty full. But we should probably have that. Also, as responsibility, one of the responsibility is attendance. So I think, if we can, if there's something that involves board member attendance as part of that, then let me know as well. Or if you could include that in the city attorney's presentation. I suppose her presentation doesn't have to be, well, it would be nice to be in person. It looks like we're going to be doing this via Zoom for whatever duration the mayor and council determine appropriate. So it would not be difficult to attend the meeting by video to give us our presentation, and then she could leave the meeting or her designee within her office.
Okay. Mr. Chair, would it be possible to move normally based on, I have the agenda here up for our current meeting. Typically we have presentations given later on in the meeting. Would it be possible, Mr. Chair, to move that particular presentation up to right after approval of the minutes. That way, that presentation can be given first. Would you be amenable to that?
I would. I don't know if there's any comment, any opposition from other members of the board. If there are, please let Mr. Hume know. He and I work on the agenda beforehand, and this has just been the traditional way we've done business. But we have, since I've been in as much during the time I've been on the board, moved presentations up. So that'd be fine. To me, but if any other board member has any other comment, the same way for, I would assume for economic development, rather than have her abide her time and sit there while we go through other things, maybe her presentation could be done at an earlier point in time too, where we can get the benefit of understanding where economic development is thinking as a department, vis-a-vis the airport and the Mr. Clark, Mr. Leonard's comments that they've raised.
Okay.
So
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see any, I don't see any objection to that by the other board members at this point. So what I'll do is moving forward, if there is a particular presentation from somebody who is not normally with our group, then what I can do is I can propose that their presentation be moved ahead of any action or discussion items. Typically, Mr. Chair, what I'll do is if I'm giving a presentation, I can certainly keep mine to later on in the meeting till we get through action items and such. So, but I appreciate, Mr. Chair, and from the rest of the board, that flexibility. Thank you.
well, I think in terms of that, they may be more discussion items, but we can split the discussion items. They're a presentation, but if they're not denominated as a discussion item, then the board would not be able to discuss with that individual making the presentation. So perhaps it could be called well, I don't know, you can wordsmith it, but they can be first. Or looking at our menu today, it would be the agenda today would be item 5. They could move up there. The other items presumably would be quick, but I would like them to be able, the board members to be able to discuss with them any issues that might be raised. Otherwise, it's just a slam bam presentation, and we're left with any questions we might have to ask you. So, all right. Any comments, anything else before we move for future presentations, before we move on to the next meeting? With that, the next meeting is September 17, 2020, and it will be 12:30. Unless there's an issue with the date and time, I presume it's going to be by Zoom unless we're allowed to meet at the airport. And if we're allowed to meet at the airport in a with some type of separation of individuals, it seems to me that with Mr. Baker's permission, we might be able to spread out in the EAA hangar. Got a lot of chairs, and they have some capability there. I would like to ask that you pass the board's condolence to Mr. Baker, as I lost my father in '85, but I still remember him. So those, if you'd pass that condolence on.
Yes, sir.
Anything else before we adjourn? With that, Mr. Clark wants to speak with you, but I'll go ahead and leave the meeting. I'll declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You all have a good rest of your week.
Bye, folks.